Throughout the first week of October in 2015, the state of South Carolina was hit with record amounts of rainfall. This excessive rainfall led to large amounts of flooding and multiple dam failures around the state. Richland County was hit harder than most other counties in the state, and the damages were devastating. Columbia had over 16 inches of rainfall, and the flooding caused hundreds of roads, bridges, and interstates to be closed, including a 70-mile stretch of I-95. It's estimated that the flooding caused over $1 billion in damages around the state. This event has been called the 1,000-year flood because of how unlikely a weather incident of this magnitude is. Homes were destroyed, lives were lost, and the state of South Carolina was left to deal with a disaster it never could have prepared for. The government was involved on a national level, and impacts of the flooding and dam failures will be felt in the state of South Carolina for years to come. It is tough to imagine how we could have prepared for a storm of this enormity, but it is important to look back at the efforts made by the government and the various impacts that these floods have had to our state.
Although not every disaster can be prevented, the government did in this case appropriately respond. On October 4th, 2015, President Obama declared a state of emergency in South Carolina for the affected counties, and members of the National Guard were deployed for local assistance. FEMA sent incident management teams to work alongside state emergency operations centers to allow for better communication between federal and state agencies. FEMA had pre-positioned supplies such as water, meals, and blankets strategically placed throughout the city to assist state agencies in assisting people affected by the flood. 46 counties in South Carolina were granted an emergency declaration which allowed FEMA to identify and provide the necessary equipment for the state. South Carolina residents affected could apply for FEMA assistance, and people were urged by the government to report flood damage so that it could be accurately assessed and remedied.
The state of South Carolina defines floods and dam failures as low possibility, high consequence. And after all the floods with the economic and emotional damage, they released some of the inspection reports and showed that some of the dams that had failed had some deficiencies. One was included to have erosion. So the state of South Carolina didn't take the necessary precautions to ensure that the lowest possibility of these dams failing would occur. So that caused a bunch of unnecessary economic and emotional damages to small businesses around here. Even if they didn't have physical damages, small businesses were blocked off by broken roads, so they lost a lot of revenue from potential customers. And a lot of small businesses had to shut down all their buildings because they didn't have the necessary revenues to rebuild the damages from the flood. In total, is estimated that around $390 million of economic output was lost during the floods. And most big businesses can't afford it, but most of the small businesses around the state of South Carolina can't afford to repair the damages from the dam failures. Governor Haley wants to ask the federal government for a $140 million grant in order to repair the flood damages from all the houses, which will about equate to about $56,000 per household for flood damages. This means that the budget for South Carolina and for the government will have to be allocated from different sources and will decrease spending in other areas.
As we previously mentioned, the flooding that occurred in South Carolina was a once-in-a-millennium occurrence. Despite the unlikelihood of such an event happening again, in the near future, steps must be taken to better prepare not only the city of Columbia, but the entirety of South Carolina. From a broad perspective, the infrastructure of the United States is in a state of decline. Addressing that problem on a local and national level will cost a hefty sum. However, if state, local, and federal governments are able to cooperate and preemptively plan for such events in the future, the damages and the resulting loss of income and revenue will be lessened.